Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Total Tracking Virtual Conference, a full dedicated to improving data efficiency in your sterile processing department. I'm Brett Norton from Beyond Clean, and I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for joining us today. It's been a great day of discussions, panel discussions, presentations, and a lot of things to think about as we move forward in 2022. So thank all of you. For those of you anxiously awaiting your CE credits, after viewing all of today's sessions, you'll have access to the full conference survey and will be able to download your CE certificate. So that's important. Just want to make sure that I reiterate that after viewing today's sessions, you'll have the access to the full conference survey and be able to download your CE certificate after this last session. Joining us next is Roneisha Gale, Implementation Specialist at Censis Technologies. Roneisha started her career as a sterile processing technician where she quickly moved up the ranks to sterile processing educator. It wasn't until the COVID-19 pandemic struck that Roneisha discovered her passion for the IT side of sterile processing. It was then she found her home at Censis, working exclusively on the Censis tracking system. Today, Roneisha is going to present a how-to guide for tracking high-cost serialized instrumentation. She will also explain the benefits of implementing a high-value asset tracking process to your department's workflow. So without further ado, let's welcome Roneisha Gale.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am really excited to be doing this presentation because I know that this is a serious pain point for a lot of sterile processing departments. So we're going to go ahead and move along because I know I'm the last, and thank you for holding on today. So as Brett mentioned, we are covering the total tracking of high-value instrumentation like robotic sets and serialized sets as well. He's also already covered our course objectives today, so let's get to it. First scenario, Dr. Fordiff calls SPD and states that the camera on my first case was blurry. Meanwhile, it's 11 a.m. and he's on his third case. You go to Decontam and find the cameras are pictured just like this. That's normal for us, not? So how would we actually locate the camera that caused an issue on Dr. Fordiff's case? Will we physically look at each camera to check the serial number? Or how do we know which serial number was actually utilized on Dr. Fordiff's case? Are we going to have to test each camera immediately to prevent a patient safety issue? These are some of the questions that we're going to answer during this presentation. So some may ask, well, why serialized tracking? By tracking at the serialized level, you will be able to quickly identify the items in question to check the validity and remove it from rotation to prevent any near miss events. You're able to view your location. You are able to view the locations, all the locations that it's been within the workflow to perform a effective root cause analysis. And it also prevents waste of productivity by letting the tracking system work as an FTE for you. How do we do this? So within the SensorTrack system, you're able to go from the main menu to inventory, and then under containers, you will go to the container actual that you want to add the serial number for. Then you're going to hit your action button. And at that moment, you will get this pop up here, and it's going to ask you what you would like to do. You're going to select edit the container. You'll then get a pop up that looks just like this one that says that we can either enter the assembly location, the storage location, or the serial number. Being as though we're doing serialized tracking, we want to enter the serial number in that last box. When that's done, it immediately gives you the option to add the serial number to your labels. If you are beginning this process for the first time, you've already had SensorTrack implemented, you will need to call your case manager and ask them to add the serial number to your labels if you want it this way. If you are a base level customer, then you will need to add the serial number to the container name. And that is how you'll be able to track the set if you are not actually on the advanced level. After you enter the number, of course, we want to save. So the case where the actual container was utilized can be located within the case tracking module if we've entered that serial number, of course. So if we go to the case tracking module, you're able to put in the case number and it will bring back up the case that you were looking for if they're scanning it in the room. So the bottom picture shows how that will show up for you in sterile processing. It literally tells you the times that it was checked into the sterilizer and every location thereafter. In addition to those steps, you're also able to see exactly how many times an item has been utilized. And a lot of times we do this when we're looking at robotic instrumentation. So let's give another scenario. The Da Vinci coordinator at Franklin Medical unexpectedly went out on leave. There are 3 robotic cases that all require 1 mega suture needle driver to be open and 1 held for safety. Currently, you can only locate 2 that have been pill packed. Let's think this through. How would we be able to identify the current number available and location of this specific Da Vinci arm quickly? How can you track the utilization of such a highly rotated and valuable item without a coordinator for the service? If the arm has been damaged or needs repair, how can we capture that key information all at the same time? The answer to that would be SensorTrack. So from our main menu, we can go to the inventory and then to containers, and then we will add the container type and then the sterilization method. The number of uses is where you can control the number of times the arm is sent through the sterilization process. So depending on the number that you put in that box is going to decipher the number of times it allows the technician to assemble that tray before a notification is prompted on the screen that lets them know that this item needs to be sent for repair or replaced. So in order to actually set that up, you would go to the action button on the container, and then you want to add that specific container. So for a Da Vinci arm, as you can see here, I have pictured, we make Da Vinci arms containers. Is a very easy way to track it. Because, once again, with that container, we can set the number of uses. Well, I had this issue happen once before. We had a Da Vinci coordinator. She went out on an unexpected medical, and all of a sudden, the staff and SPD starts coming to me with Da Vinci arms that are not labeled. And so that's not our normal process. So I'm like, okay, something new is happening. So I go upstairs and I find out, well, someone's taken over for her and they just opened the arms and sent them downstairs. At that point, I no longer knew what usage level that arm was on. So I took the arm to the operating room, had the person that was filling in for her plug it into the robot, which does give us a hard number. So at that point, I was able to go downstairs and put it into the system to catch it up so that we can keep track of the number of uses on an SPD side, in addition to the number of uses in the OR. So we've selected the container, we've added it, and then at this point, you're going to want to print the label and place it directly on the Da Vinci arm in a spot that is not going to, of course, create an accumulation of bioburden or cover any pertinent information. The utilization count will always be visible, and that, if you're not sure, is always on the last column under the container next to the actual for itself. So as you can see pictured here, we have the Da Vinci Mega Suture Cut Needle Driver, number 1. Gives us the date and time, whom assembled it, the current location. If it were in a case cart, that would be there, but on that last line, it shows usage. If you could see, number 3 has hit its maximum numbers of use. At that point, you will then receive a pop-up when the tech scans the arm on that 10th time. And it will say that there has been a request for maintenance. The container is due for maintenance every 10 uses and was last sent on. And it gives the tech all of that information in order to move on. So to actually request maintenance, if an item came down and say it reached the end of life prior to our sterilization end of life, you would go back to the container actual, and then you're going to scroll down to request maintenance. That will then put the arm out of service regardless of the number of uses, and someone of higher supervision will then need to approve for that set to be sent to maintenance. Once it is actually sent to maintenance, in order to access that module, we're going to want to go to the main menu and then inventory. Then we're going to click maintenance. We're going to fill out all of the pertinent information, and then you want to scan the Da Vinci arm so that it will populate just at the top of the screen. Once you scanned it, that sends it to repair. This is how you can reset your usage back to 0 and print a new label if you receive a new arm while tracking your robotic inventory. Once the container actual has been scanned to the repair, the status is updated to in repair, and the utilization is set back to 0. As you can see here, number 3 has now been placed back to 0, and it gives us the last date of maintenance. So once the container actual is scanned into the return from repair module, the status is updated to disassembled. Every field in the repair module can be populated within a report. If you're in the need of the metrics, say you're in shopping around trying to get a new repair company, or you have an obligation to have something back and they're not meeting that, if you fill out the repair module, it asks you when you sent it, when the expected date of return, and the date that it actually was returned. So all of those things can be populated in a report to help management move as necessary. I have come to the point to where I want to open it up for questions. And the reason I'm doing this so soon is because there are a lot of facilities out here that do it differently. Not everyone utilizes SensiTrack, and I'm a little curious to see how we're out here moving along with tracking things that are literally the pain of our SPD existence. If there is anything at all that you guys have in addition to what I have already spoken to, please feel free to speak up. One point that I did not mention was you can QR code Da Vinci arms as well, or any instrument, and they can be scanned directly into SensiTrack that way as well if you did not want to do the barcodes. So there are a couple options and a couple different companies out here that provide those.
Roneisha, I was gonna jump in here, and maybe we can discuss a few things in terms of maybe veering away from the product itself, because, we are in an educational format. So I wanted to get your feedback, being that you've worked in sterile processing, and maybe from a technician's viewpoint and working with a tracking system that may or may not have been SensiTrack or being introduced to that. Would you mind, going a little bit deeper into some of the benefits that you saw as you learned a tracking system at the ground level working in sterile processing?
A tracking system is literally, it's another couple of people, if you ask me. From a tech standpoint, I used to come in very early, and I would have to go to each and every OR to find out what was on the cards and make sure that nothing had been stolen from the night before so that they were ready to go. With the tracking system, that no longer needs to happen. I mean, as long as you scan everything to a case card, it's a click of your mouse to make sure that everything is still present. Now, yes, the tracking system is only as good as the user. So as long as everyone is scanning, we can find everything, but that is what it does. It diminishes the time. You all know how it feels when the OR calls and they can't find that needle in the haystack. And now we've all have to stop and try to find that needle in the haystack while still meeting the goals for the day. And that's becoming harder and harder nowadays, with the world the way that it is. Tracking systems are essentially an additional FTE for techs that's your coworker, because normally when you would ask someone to help you go and look for this, you can look into the tracking system and find everything that you need quite faster than you could if you left the department. So I came from sterile processing when we didn't have a tracking system. I was in a filing cabinet and you had to go and pull your count sheet. So when I first utilized one, it was like, oh my goodness, this is what we didn't know that we needed. So if we're using the tracking systems effectively, they are essentially help that it's immeasurable. As far as even the reporting, for a tech to be able to check their productivity for the day, because sometimes you just feel like I was hit by a bus today. Well, you actually did 60 trays, so that's a good way to look into it without actually going and disrupting your manager, who may or may not be available. It just gives everyone a sense, for me, of ownership and accountability. You can find a tray, you can find an instrument. As techs know, we love when they call and want to pop a 300 item tray for one Gelpy, and that Gelpy is just the one that he wants all the time. Well, there are 2 other trays that actually have that Gelpy, but without a tracking system, we can't find that easily. So there are things with the tracking system, once again, even on the scope side. Techs get nervous when it comes to scopes if you don't do them all the time, because there are so many different and varying steps. So tracking systems now have the capability of housing all of those steps and not allowing you to skip over or miss out on anything. So it gives a tech more of a confidence as well when they are processing these things that are of high value and high constitution. So I really am here for tracking systems.
Yeah, and really I appreciate the explanation. Yeah, I think coming from somebody that has actually worked with them and had to implement them for department workflow efficiencies, that is invaluable. And you did touch on a little bit the budget part of things. There is a high cost sometimes associated with implementing these tracking systems. But, once implemented, then you have the efficiency piece and it almost balances out. So do you have any insight on how a department manager could basically, what are the tools they could use to justify the cost? when there's no budget.
Literally. Well, off rip for a department manager right now, CensiTrack, like I said, can show up in a way as multiple FTEs. A lot of people don't have supervisors right now. You don't have someone that can actually go and check your inventory, your soft goods, your consumables. If you have a tracking system, all of that can be put in. You can set par levels for each to where you're sent an email when the last one's taken before it's gone, before the last one is taken, so that you can put an order in. Even on the materials management side, people don't realize, like, a CPD essentially used to do everything, and now we're getting into more of the split situations because we need more time and attention on instrumentation. But your sterile supply department can utilize CensiTrack as well, or a tracking system, because as we know, when they run out of that last suture for that doctor and it's the morning of, it's kind of like, now you've got to drive up the cost, get a courier, go pull it, call this person. Can I go do this? And it's just, the tracking system can help you track employees, inventory, reports, everybody, vendors. We even go as far as having the vendors become responsible for actually logging their trays in. And now on the SPD side, all we're doing is clicking a button to say, yes, they did bring it. And then we click a button that says, oh, we're done with this. And it'll send an email. So now we don't have to chase that vendor rep down to come and get his trays, right, or, keep playing the shuffle game with the carts that we already know we don't have enough of. Right. So tracking systems, like I said, in excess, it does cost to start. But if you look at the risk and what you have put out with all of the unknowns prior to, it's well worth the investment. It's well worth it. And it also, like I said, can prevent and help track issues. We had an issue to where there was a sleeve on a laparoscopic tray, just one particular instrument that was giving people an infection. But if you have 10 lap choles and nothing is really tracked down to the individual instrument, you wouldn't know until you had to send everything out. And by that time, your department's at a pause, and you've lost a lot of money. Right. So, it's just being able to track things down to that point and seeing what cases they were on. It could actually narrow it down. It may not be something that was done in the OR. It could just be this instrument needs to be retired. And a lot of times we see that. These major companies won't come out and say, hey, it was us. You just see a new version of it until you see that lawsuit commercial. Right. So being able to track those things really helps a manager.
Yeah, I kind of, it falls into the old adage of time is money, right? The more time you spend looking for instruments, trying to find where the process was broken, there's, like you said, the department ends up in a standstill. So those are really good points as far as giving a department some tools as far as justifying the implementation of a tracking system. We do have some good questions here from the audience, and I will hit on the first one. Do you see any difference in success rates for high dollar items that are stored in SPD versus outside SPD, like the OR, core, etc.?
Yes. I am a firm believer that the department that takes care of the instrumentation should house it. I'm sure there are SPD techs clapping right now because we many times will work hard, put the trays together, wrap them, get them ready, and you see the rep walk by with 20 of them on the cart, and you're going to have 5 with holes. So it's like, if I were able to prepare it and take care of it and then take it upstairs, I know we're going to get to this cart with it done properly. It's for me, if it's in the department, you actually have more control over it. Like I said, what happens with it? I've been into departments to where sterile items are kept in the OR core, and there's really no manning. So then now you have to take the extra time to go through and make sure that things are being rotated effectively and there's no dust sitting on it, or that a rep hasn't stuck a unsterile item on the shelf next to it, and then who's going to get dinged for it? We would, just because we sterilized it. So for me, I think it's best if the instruments are housed in the department where the technicians are certified and are able to care for it effectively.
All right, great answer. And another one here, are you able to input the specific packaging size? And this is, I guess, more into the details of a tracking system, but are you able to input the specific packaging size and method for robotic instruments in the tracking system? And how does this save time and supplies?
Yes, you are able to do that, and you can add it to the actual product item itself, so that no matter where it is, that's how that item is to be handled. Or if it is something like a robotic arm and you want the specific peel pack ones that are not in the set to be done that way, then you can put it in the special handling. And a way, once again, to do that would be, if you don't want to make it a container, you could utilize the QR coding for them. And then when it's scanned, it houses all the information from the usage to what type of wrap, whatever information you want in there is buildable. So yes, you can input that information. In SensiTrack specifically, it's under special handling.
Gotcha. All right. So this one comes from Blaine, and he says, I know there are heat-resistant labels available, but have any been validated for use on sterile products by their manufacturers? And I don't know if that's something you can answer or...
Blaine, that is a wonderful question that I cannot answer for you. I don't want to speak for any of these lovely companies, but that's something that you could always call them and speak to their tech department. Please don't just call customer service. They'll never know what you're talking about. Same if you're calling for an IFU. Ask to speak to their technical data department, and they'll be able to answer those questions for you.
All right, thanks. Another one that's probably a little bit more specific to your specific system, but I think could probably be applied to a lot of tracking systems. But if I'm tracking at the instrument level, can I track the number of sterilizations with the maintenance module?
The number of sterilizations, yes. So the number of uses is garnered by the times it hits the sterilizer. So once it is, so in the OR, so specifically, let's say Da Vinci, okay, that the robot counts the number of times it's utilized in the robot. But we know quite often they'll pull extra arms and not everything gets utilized on the case. So per Intuitive themselves, they have a number of times that an item can be sterilized and a number of items a time can be utilized. And that is all within your Da Vinci Apex that comes with the stuff. It literally gives you both of those numbers and you can build them in. But when you put them into SensiTrack counts the number of times it hits the sterilizer. So yes, that is what that tracks.
All right. This one is more label specific, and I would say that you probably have some experience with this in sterile processing and probably in your clinical rounds now with Censis. But how do you maintain the integrity of the labels on the arms of the Da Vinci instruments? Because obviously those are used to scan and track. Do they peel? And if there are there safeguards or anything to help with that?
As far as maintaining a label, I can put this picture. I don't know if you guys can see the picture that I put back up here. But the label, I didn't have issues, and the permanent marker was not on there. I blocked out the hospital for the demonstration purposes. But the label, we didn't have issues with it rolling or anything of that nature because, once again, we simply cut off anything excess and make sure that it was not over anywhere that the glove or anything would rub against or cause an issue. So the picture there is actually the back of the Da Vinci arm, so it's not coming in contact with anything. It doesn't get rubbed on or anything like that. And that arm actually was retired. So that arm hit the number of uses, and the ink, as you can see, just started to kind of, and that's only on the word Prevac. And if you ask me, I probably think it probably came out of the printer like that. But no, they don't degrade or anything like that. And like I said, it's only depending on the type of arm. Most of the time it's 10 uses. So they won't degrade that fast.
All right. This one is something we touched on a little bit, but the best advice for transitioning from a no tracking into a tracking system. We talked about some of the steps and things that you could maybe ask for C-suite leaders in terms of budget, but maybe this could be moved more towards the actual people that are working with the system and how you justify it with the employees that are going to be using it. How do you explain that? How do you say this is going to be better?
I always address it in the manner of it takes the question out of everything. You have so many things to track in sterile processing. You need to track productivity. You need to track the load sterilized. Everything needs to be tracked in surgery. And so with the actual tracking system, you're able to garner more FTEs if you need them, because you're able to show exactly how much your staff is producing. If you're on the cusp of feeling like your staff is burned out, well, the tracking system will show exactly how much work they're doing. And it can say, hey, look, I need more people. Or on the opposite, the adverse, you have, staff that want to come in on the weekend, and, you say, oh, I don't see a problem with that. Well, now you have a tracking system. You can look ahead on the schedule to see if you're actually going to need that number of staff for the weekend. It helps with everything. A tracking system helps managers actually calm down, because what Monday morning is coming in, and you're getting all these calls about why this is not ready, and you haven't even put your wallet on the desk. So with a tracking system, you can peek in or receive emails throughout the weekend and ensure that everything's on track to not come in putting out too many fires, because we know we still have to, but not too many of them. I tell techs all the time, because when we first get it, they go, well, this is going to slow me down because I have to hit it every time. I said, well, this is showing them exactly what you're doing. Now, do you want this person to get an infection and it comes back and it says you did this 300-line tray in 2 minutes? And then they go, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Take your time. It's literally giving the picture that everyone needs. This is what we need to evoke change. A manager goes into those meetings with a stack of papers. Those stack of papers are the texts and the works that they have done. The people in the room don't understand that. So the tracking system lays it out for them to see it just as we see it when we're on the floor. I've seen facilities use it as far as having them log in when they hit the floor, because, you have the time that they can clock in, and then you have the time you want them to report on the floor. Well, some people are losing productivity in between there because breakfast is being, picked up or running back out to the car. People have used this tracking system or any tracking system to track every single thing. I've been to a facility where you had to write that you helped wrap somebody else's tray, but that still counts towards productivity for that manager in that department. If you do a lot of wrapping, you definitely want to make sure that soft wrap is selected so that you can show what you're containing versus what your staff is wrapping, because then now maybe you may be able to get the reps to buy some containers, because we keep having holes and don't have time to keep reprocessing it. So I could go on for days about all the benefits
right.
that will help tech on the tech level, management level, C-suite level, bring about the change that you need in your department by garnering a tracking system.
Yeah, I think I've talked with Kelly Swills about this a little bit previously, and I've coined the term crystal ball. Basically, you can almost see ahead based on what you're working with and based on the things that have happened in a given day. And because no day is the same, right? Especially when it comes to surgeries and hospitals, and it's definitely something that helps you with your workflows, your operations, your management, and I think overall employee satisfaction. So there's a lot that goes into it that's really helpful. Um,
Yes.
can you share any best practices? And we're kind of turning a little bit here, but any best practices related to robotic storage?
Best practices when it comes to robotic storage. Okay, for sure. One, make sure that the shelf that you order is long enough for the arms if you are storing them. Having them crimped up where the heads and things are just stuck on the shelves are surely going to give you holes in your pill packs. Um, the other items, make sure that you're not pill packing items that are too heavy, because some people think that you can just pill pack everything robotic just because it's light. No, those cannulas seem to always put that finite tear in those pill packs. So you may want to order some mud boxes for those individual trocars and things of that nature. Not nothing too expensive, but just you cannot pill pack everything for sure. And you want to make sure that if you don't have a Da Vinci coordinator, that someone is constantly rotating on those just to make sure that there are indicators and everything, because it's always that last Maryland that someone forgets to put an indicator in and you don't have anymore. So just ensuring before that things get stored to the shelf that you do visually see the indicators for your actual single arms. Storage, once again, you just want to make sure that you're rotating it out. I can't
Because
express that
tracking and
enough.
storage go hand in hand, right?
Yes.
You know they complement each other, so you have to be able to store in terms of how you're tracking the instrument and where it is and where it's lying on the shelf, because if it's said to be there and it's not there, then
Exactly. And that's another thing, making sure that when you do get your tracking system that you do input locations. And we know when you first start, it's not always feasible. So, if you can within 6 months or so, start deciding exactly where you want things to be. And I would even go as far as trying to organize it by the service. If they do certain cases in the certain corners all the time, those are designated rooms, maybe store those things over there. Help with the lean process and grabbing things quickly and effectively. But if everything has an assigned location, somebody can just walk and put their hands on it. It doesn't always have to be SPD, because the OR is trained as well. So if everyone knows and there's clear communication, it's teamwork then.
right. Yep. No, that's a great point. And I think that this is a question that we've answered a little bit, but can you track the number of instruments a tech does or services in a day with these systems?
Services, I'm sure that we can. My brain is flashing through all the lines in our reports right now. I'm sure that you can narrow it down to service. I know that you can. It definitely shows you the type. You can look at the number of instruments, and that's how, being in management before, I know that I can look as an educator and see if someone's uncomfortable or not confident in something. If you keep grabbing small trays and you're purposely avoiding hearts and, thoracic, things like that, I'm going to come find you and we're going to do that.
Because
That's how it was for us.
Yep.
They just gave them to you back in the day. They didn't have a tracking system. They just put you on ENT and you had to learn. But now you have an educator can look and see what people are avoiding or what they're gearing towards. And even management, if you decide to go into service lines, you have that Censis Queen or that, Lap Coley King. Maybe they can become, the specialist for that other new hires come in. go to them because, they know it forwards and backwards, because that's playing to a person's strengths, not saying that you don't want them to do anything else. But if someone, just seems to grasp that and has the capability to teach it, why not? But you can look in the tracking system and tell if they favor that thing, without standing on the floor, because management does not have time for that, to see what they're doing. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's important in terms of the training aspect that you mentioned, and having some continuity and consistency with the training. And speaking of training, we talked about this earlier in the conference, but you're being on site clinically, and you touched on some of the details of the system that you work with, the SensorTrack system. Do you have a methodology, or is there a frequency when you go into these, I guess when you're visiting your facilities, training and retraining? Because you can't just pull the plug and say, have fun, we'll see you later. And I'm sure that you guys you have service packages, and you're not going to let your customers sit, but is there like I said, a methodology and a way that you approach the training aspect, as far as maybe a new person versus an experienced person, or is it all one and the same, just kind of a constant review?
So for us with SensorTrack, when we go on site, it's like anyone else. You've been on your way to CVS from work, and then you look up and you're in your driveway. You're like, how did I do that? It's called autopilot. So when we come in, we just immediately interrupt the flow with what you were doing and get you into the groove of learning this new habit. And it's the same way with instrumentation or anything else. The more that you keep going and doing it, you're going to remember it. You're going to get better at it. And then as far as us in continuing education, yes, there is all kind of how-tos and help videos and things on the website. Depending on the contract that you do select, we do have what we call a Service Plus, where we will come out, and that will be your client manager that will come out once a year and assess the staff, because we know right now, especially, is volatile when it comes to rotation of staff. So we don't have educators. Everyone's traveling, it seems. So if you needed that is an option that SensorTrack will provide, and I'm sure others will too. But yes, continual education is something that we always strive for, because we're always updating SensorTrack. We get client requests, and the product development team goes in and tries to make those things happen. And when they do, they'll send out new releases. And then the client managers reach out and say, hey, how's everything going? So at any point, if anyone felt that they needed to, be brushed up or anything of that case, we're always there.
Yeah, and I think that anytime when you talk about technology and the continual advancement and how rapid the change is with technology, it can be intimidating, right?
Yes.
Something one day is not the same as the day before. And you don't want to press a button that may disrupt the system. I think, usability, of course, is a huge thing when it comes to technology. So, I would say usability is one of the most important features, and just being able to train and educate on a consistent basis is I'm sure you would agree.
Yes, very much so. We always state, the system is only as good as the user. So if you choose not to scan somewhere, that's probably going to be the part that you need to know, because SPD is Murphy's Law. Wherever you stop scanning is where you're going to need that result. So just scan everywhere, and you will be able to find everything that you need. And once again, if you seen anything today that you're not aware of or not sure of, contact your client manager, and they will help walk you through this as well.
Awesome. Well, Roneisha, I think we are pretty much at the end of our questions, and looks like we're at the end of our day. So I want to thank you for joining us. And I know it's been a little bit of a hectic Friday for you, getting off of a plane and into the driver's seat to do the presentation. So really thank you for sitting down with me. And once again, everybody, if we have any questions related to Roneisha's presentation, please feel free to reach out to her individually. She has her contact information right here on the screen, and she'll gladly follow up with you. We'll also be sharing the questions that came through here if we didn't get to them. It looks like we answered the majority of those questions. I think sometimes they do tend to roll in a little bit later, so if they do, we'll certainly send them her way. And as our day comes to a close, I would once again like to thank today's premier event sponsor, Censis Technologies. Without their support, this exciting day of virtual learning would not have been possible. And a special thank you to our industry experts for joining us for this virtual event. I'd also like to recognize all of the professionals who repros surgical instruments across the globe. For all of you who chose to spend the day educating yourself with us, we'd like to thank you for your dedication to professional development and best practice. Just as a reminder, you will find additional bonus CE content in the downloadable resources tab. So make sure to check on these additional CE opportunities. You also find instructions for downloading and accessing your CE certificate at the conclusion of today's conference. At this session's close, you will be directed to the conference survey page. From there, you can download your CE certificate for today's 6 live sessions. All of today's sessions are available on demand, so you can rewatch, share, and continue to access the downloadable resources and bonus CE content provided to you. That is one of the best benefits of this because it's on demand and available, so please utilize it as you need it, and we'll have it there for you. On behalf of myself and my co-host, Lindsay Brown, we'd like to thank you again for joining us, and to all of our healthcare professionals, stay safe out there. As always, keep fighting dirty, and we'll see you next time.